Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last session of the Agony Expert Series. I'm Melvin from Singapore, and I will be the moderator for today's session. So, for the participants that we have here, let us get to know you better. I know some of you have been present in the previous sessions, but do tell us your name and what organization you are from in the chat box. While waiting for your responses, here's a quick reminder. If anyone has questions you'd like Amanda to address, there are two ways you can do it. You can unmute yourself and ask away, or you can send it through the chat box and I'll be monitoring it and ask Amanda on your behalf. An introduction to the Agony Expert Series. Those who have joined us for past sessions have known this already, but for the first timers, you may be wondering why Agony Expert Series. We have drawn inspiration from an agony aunt, who by definition is a person who writes a column in a newspaper or magazine in which they reply to readers who have written to them for advice on their personal problems. In short, it's kind of a play on that concept, thus the Agony Expert Series, where you, our participants, can share what problems, struggles you are facing within your organization and seek insights directly from our expert. This is the last of our 17 sessions, as you can see on the screen. Together with the 17 world-class experts that have gathered, they have covered 8 different topics that are timely and relevant in our industry today. You can go onto our Agony Expert Series landing page and get our full playlist of the previous sessions by clicking on any of the boxes. If you don't see the session you're looking for, they'll be updated by tomorrow. An introduction to today's session is on maximizing people's potential. Want to accurately access your workforce to optimize your talent strategies and not let biases cloud your judgment? We have Amanda Smith, VP Consulting and Strategic Accounts at People. She's a business. Was I muted the whole time?
No, just the last second.
I don't know why I was suddenly muted. But today's session is on maximizing your people's potential. Want to accurately access your workforce to optimize your talent strategies and not let biases cloud your judgment? We have Amanda Smith, VP Consulting and Strategic Accounts at People. She's a business psychologist with over 20 years of consulting experience across an international range of locations. She's invested in developing human capital capability and seeks to deliver excellent performance outcomes for organizations. Our expert will share use cases that transform learning strategies into real business success and more. Just a little background on who we are. People is a consulting firm that started in 2004, sold itself, and relaunched in 2020 with a consulting model geared towards the future of work. Our team serves both our clients and our network of over 1,000 experts. Who are these experts? We have consultants, business leaders, thought leaders, researchers, and tech partners. Together, we deliver consulting work, speaking engagements, lunch and learns, training, coaching, instructional design, organizational, and people diagnostics. Our experts deliver work across 6 broad domains: people, digital innovation, business, sustainability, change management, and design. In short, people can attend to any business challenge you might have. Do check out our website and find out more about us at www.people.com. And just a quick run through of what's going to happen today. We have Amanda to address the group for approximately 25 minutes, followed by a Q&A with you for another 25 minutes. Then we will go ahead and wrap things up in the remaining 5 minutes of the event. Again, we'd love to receive your questions. Do drop them in the chat box and we'll address them during the Q&A session. I know you're excited and I won't keep you any longer. So I'm handing it over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Melvin. So it's Friday afternoon. I want to say welcome to the last of our series. It's been a great month and we've covered tons of content. It's been great to have some regulars here and you're here again. So we very much hope that this is an enjoyable last session and you get a whole lot out of it. I am going to share my screen while I just remind you that with, unfortunately or fortunately, more than 20 years of experience behind us, there is a ton of information that we're going to try and get through today. There's plenty of room for questions and there's always going to be more that we could possibly be sharing. So just bear with us as we go through it. And again, I thoroughly encourage you to ask questions. Today is about maximising your people potential. And in terms of what PPEARL does and the history of some of our consultants this is what exactly we have done for the past 20 years. So from looking at individual graduates that come out of university to CEOs that lead organisations, no matter what level someone is operating at, we are absolutely fundamentally committed to making sure that people thrive at work and get the most out of their work as much as the organisations get as much as they can out of us. Over the last few days, we've had a few sessions on maximising people's potential. So we've had Momentum Assessor come, Core Strengths, talk about key products that help develop people and maximise whatever it is their strengths are. Today, we're going to look a little bit more into the whole assessment and development process and have a bit of a focus on what's it mean in our blended world. So as we all know, things have changed, they're still changing, and there's plenty more change to come. But what we want to focus on is the fact that everything that we talk about today can apply to a small business as much as a large one. This is not geared to multinationals. It's not geared to any particular specific audience. It's really a flexible approach that we want to make sure that any organisation can utilise, no matter what the circumstances, what the outcome is that you're seeking. And really what we're looking for at the end of the day here is saying that engaging our external candidates or our internal employees and really thriving in whatever experience they have with our organisation is what we're after. Before we get kick-started, I am just going to run a video, so please bear with me while I try and make that work successfully, which is always a challenge. So just give me a moment as I transfer over to the video and hopefully with sound. Okay, Melvin, you're going to have to give me the nods if it does not sound good.
This is another generic recruitment video. Let us begin. Do you see these doors? These are office doors. They lead to a corridor, which leads to an office full of people walking and talking to each other. This probably means they are busy. Deep in thought, he gazes beyond the horizon. If he chewed on a pencil, the shot would be more dramatic. You see? Let's cut to a stylish conference room full of people, emphatic waving of arms, while teammates listen intently. You can almost taste the dedication. Here comes token longboard bro. His workplace is just like him, super fun and laid back. Let this oversized quote in a common area inspire you. Here's a cool idea written in dry erase marker on a glass wall. Witness the positivity this arrow conveys because it is pointing up. Okay, all right, hold on, stop. This generic recruitment video could have been shot anywhere. If you're good at what you do, you can work anywhere. If you're the best at what you do, come work at Fiverr. We're looking for people looking to stay awesome. This is our logo. It says Fiverr. Join us.
Okay. So why did I show that video? Would be a good question at this point in time. So let me just get back to the presentation. Okay. The reason we showed that video is because when it comes to our careers, our assessment, our development, our promotions, all these organisations, all of us have this kind of fanciful way of hoping for the best, putting out all these images about how great things are. And sometimes the reality of this assessment, development, promotion process isn't as smooth or as beautiful as that. So what we want to do today is talk about the reality of things, the practical reality. So we can look at a video like this, and Fiverr may be a great place to work. I don't know, I haven't worked there, but I think they just did such a fantastic job of having a bit of fun with the story while still getting across the message that they think they're awesome to work with. What we're really after is processes in our organisations that make us awesome to be with And then we'll be attracting the people that are awesome to join the organisation as well. I just want to have a brief look at where we are today. And when I was thinking about this presentation, it took me back to school a little bit, unfortunately, and a book that we had to deal with was a very old one, and it's Charles Dickens's A Tale of Two Cities. And I feel like the world is sitting between two opposing forces right now. So one of the most famous quotes that comes out of this book is the one that's just there. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. If we had to look at our health or some of our economic circumstances, we're seeing really extremes between businesses that are thriving, others that have tanked, or countries that are getting themselves together to rectify what's going on with COVID while others are really struggling. There was an age of wisdom and foolishness combined together. So some people have really thought through what's going on and really been adaptive, while other organisations have really struggled and tanked because they just haven't applied that same thinking that we need to be different. And that's one of the key issues going forward, is being different and thinking differently is going to make it successful. And the last one is we had everything before us, and we look like we've got this digital world which is offering everything. But if you ask my children who are panicked about global warming, they say the world's going to be over in 10 years anyway. So we're in this constant back and forth with, are we going forward? Is this digital solution working for us? Is it difficult? There's an effort on struggling with mental health, all sorts of things that are coming through. So what we need to understand is that we are still in a massive transition. So we were moving along into a more digitized space, and COVID has absolutely blasted it forward, we all know. So the personal life of engagement to the digital world has taken forth. The freedom that we had to travel around the globe if we could has now been limited by COVID restrictions, and we're all hankering for that freedom again. But if we look back and say, if you're sitting around in 2015 or 2016, about 5 years ago, and you asked that classic career question, is where do you want to be in 5 years' time? There's only one answer. No one back then said they wanted to be here. So no one saw it coming. No one knew that this is what we'd be doing. So it just goes to show how much now we have to really think a lot more openly and a lot more creatively. So it still applies. I always put these two together. People are either super, super social, or they're super, super digital. And that's kind of the divergent ways that people are going at the moment. And the question that we have today is, how does this apply to all our assessment and development processes? So what's changed and what hasn't changed? So we've been dealing in assessment and development processes for the last 20 years, and we often sit around and say, hey, what's new? Have you found anything that's new? And often we're sitting around saying, no, we haven't. So what hasn't changed is things like when it comes to assessing for recruitment or developing our employees, is we really need to understand what our unique business needs are. So whatever they are, knowing them carefully and correctly is absolutely critical. We then need to look and say, what is an appropriate assessment or development program structure given the circumstances that we've got? Are we going to go for something that's very intense? Are we going to go something that's light? Are we going to go digital? Are we going to go personal? It doesn't matter what the answer is. The answer is it's got to reflect what your business needs, and it's got to be really useful. You've always got to set some project timelines around it, and then you've always got to look at the investment, and those things haven't changed since assessment began. So they're all fundamental, stable things that should always be a part of the process. When we then look at the classic old assessment and development funnel of how we bring people through any of these systems or processes, this fundamentally hasn't changed either. So whether we're looking to attract external candidates to our organisation, or we're trying to maximise the development and performance of the people that we already have, what we're always looking for is sourcing the maximum number of high potential people. So internal or external, we want that funnel to be super wide at the top. We always want to be able to screen out people from the process fairly early on if they aren't going to fit the program that we're looking for. So it's very much attract, see what's going on, and shimmy out those who really aren't ready for promotion, who really aren't appropriate for the organisation. All those things remain the same. The assessment side of things is then what we want to do with the people who we think are suitable. And what we've got is a huge number of tools to select from, and we'll talk about those in a bit more detail. All we need to do is make sure that we're using multiple different ways of assessing people. So if I'm terrible at an interview, but I can really write a great case study and present something, then you're getting a chance to see that I'm not just a narrow, limited individual who failed the one assessment process you offered me. But we'll talk about the tools in a lot more detail, but we're trying to look at people from numerous different angles so we can maximise the opportunities there. When it then comes to interviewing, which is often the last cut, or sometimes it's the very first cut for screening as well, it's got to be thorough and challenging. Too often we see organisations do a polite, friendly fireside chat, and it doesn't capture the depth that we're after. But the interview process is always a solid mainstay of it. And again, whether we're doing an assessment and reference checking as a way to verify what people tell us is true, or whether it's development and we all sit together and question whether this person is the right one to put through our development processes, we're always verifying from an additional source to double check that our decision making is right. Then it comes finally, if it's a recruitment offer, it's a contract, it's the dollars, it's a clearly defined offer, and whether it's development or a promotion, again, we've got to be super clear about what it is that we're offering before we finally say, here's the hire or promote process and the start work begins. So those things haven't changed, and they're all good fundamentals, and every organisation needs to make sure they're moving through that whole process. Recently worked with an organisation who surprisingly took someone that they'd sourced personally, put them straight through the funnel without much checking, and then spent 3 years trying to get rid of this person who was performing poorly. So it's still quite surprising how many organisations don't follow the process as well or as thoroughly as they should. Okay, assessment of talent. So whether it's again recruitment or development, these are the fundamentals that haven't changed over time either. So no matter whether you're assessing for recruitment or developing someone, you're always looking at multiple areas where someone needs to be competent, so you understand exactly what they should or could be doing. You want to use a variety of assessment techniques, which is what we referred to before. Where possible, we ask for multiple people to assess, not just one. If I was to hire Melvin and it's just my view, then I might have a whole heap of biases towards or against you. Sorry, Melvin. But we want to have multiple looks at people to make sure that we don't have just one focus that is biased, and we are all biased individuals. The other thing we always want to do is have multiple candidates. So the organisation I just referred to before, they sourced one person and then they decided that they liked the person. And the thing you always need to do is have multiple candidates to look at, again, for recruitment or development. And that way you say, who is the brightest shining star and who is the best person to go through? But when you do a 1-for-1 ratio, you'll probably hire that person whether they're appropriate or not. Okay. Then we look at assessing against competencies. We don't compare people to each other, which is technically what I just said, but you always want to see is who's the brightest shining star against the competency benchmark. And we always integrate the data that we collect about people, and then we make sure that throughout the whole process, everyone who's doing the assessment or development is very clearly trained and know what they're doing in terms of, I understand what I'm assessing and how I'm going to go about it. One of the things we want to look at, though, that is different is the future of work's most powerful competencies. And this has been up for discussion probably for about 5 years. And over COVID, what we've seen is the application of these and the organisations who've really made it successful and those who've really struggled. So when it comes to generalised employment across the board, no matter what position you're in, and there's all sorts of terminology you could use, we've used these particular ones today, but what we're looking at is the cognitive load and how we manage that. So that is the fact that we recognise today we're super loaded with information. So how much can the brain handle to process all the data that we're dealing with? Can we then be critical thinkers over the data that we've got? So we're not confused, we're able to pinpoint precise information, and then can we make sense of it? Once we've made sense of it, then we've got to be super capable of being novel and adaptive. We could be calling it creative or innovative thinking. But these are these 4 critical pieces that's all about the problem solving. And the problem solving has become so important because the amount of data overload we're all getting in every single role that we have. Beyond that, we want to start looking at what can people do when it comes to virtual collaboration and override this issue where we can't necessarily spend time with each other in physical presence. What new digital media literacy that we have? Are we savvy in this space? Do we know what we're getting into? Then we're looking at the idea of the fact that we will probably have multiple careers throughout the 30, 40, 50 years that we might be working. No longer are we marketing people going down a marketing path or accountants going down an accounting path. We've really got to be diverse, and people who are flexible in changing those capabilities are definitely going to thrive a lot more. And of course, emotional intelligence sits underneath it all the time, no matter what level you're at. So being savvy about who you are, how you're feeling, and how you're responding. When it comes to leadership, this is the additional focus that we're looking at. So although we've defined it as competency areas here, it's a set of behaviours and an outlook that leaders need to be having, particularly post-COVID or in this new transitioned world. So leaders are people now who should be measuring results, not the hours that you work or the way that you spend time at work, because we can't see anymore what people are physically doing. So we ask people to do something and look for the result that they give us in return. We're now coordinating people based on skills, not roles. So we're very much engaging around networked or project teams and bringing skill sets together. Yes, we might still be referring to roles and responsibilities, but moving forward, it's the dynamic skills basis that's going to be driving the future of work and leaders' ability to see where those skills sit. We'll be looking at developing many people rather than succession planning on a narrow path, because we want that diversity to come into it. Then what we need to see is leaders who have great communication skills so they can master the face-to-face as well as the online, and the understanding of what's different and how it's different. Once we've got that, we're looking at the agility to be constantly transforming. So that change, flexibility, looking to the future, looking to the environment around us, and looking to the business to say what needs to be different so we can make this organisation successful and the people in it. So again, the emotional intelligence comes up quite a lot because it's absolutely critical, and holding a growth mindset. So no matter where you are, it's that humility to say, I don't know everything and I've got a great opportunity to learn. The key and most critical difference that's been coming out over COVID particularly is engagement. So leaders who know how to engage have taken organisations that are potentially struggling or sending their people off to work at home or work under flexible conditions. Those leaders who have communicated their engagement and spent time has been the thing that has outstandingly seen organisations really thrive. The reason the engagement has become so important is what we've lost is what we always call the water cooler conversations. So once upon a time, in the good old days, people used to have millions of conversations as they passed each other in the hallway, as they stood to get a coffee in the kitchen, as they said, hey, let's go out and have lunch together. Now what we're doing is those conversations have disappeared, and we look at people's calendars and go, they've got a meeting from 11 till 12, 12 to 1, 1 to 2, I can't speak to them. And I've watched people have conversations saying, I can't call them, they're busy, I can't. So the leaders who have focused on engaging have been the ones that have really made a difference now that the way we engage with each other has completely turned on its head. So it's a slightly different way of looking in the past, but these are absolutely core, and the research has supported it the whole way through. And now we're seeing research done on the organisations have been super successful throughout COVID. And these are the ones that become the more outstanding. When it comes to tools and choices, at some level, it is the same as what has been before. So we're always looking at personality questionnaires to help flesh out what kind of person am I getting. Okay, there are now thousands to choose from, and we will talk about that in a minute. The second one that a lot of people are loving is more the work simulation exercises. So when you meet someone and you say, look, we're going to spend time doing lots of presentations. Can you do a simulated presentation for me? And then we're getting that real tangible evidence of can they do it or can they not? At the bottom there, it says specifically there are case studies, presentations, group exercises, role play activities, but I've put games in capital. So what we're finding is that there's a whole lot of gamified processes that are making these activities fun rather than what they used to be as a complete intellectual and emotional drain. There's a whole gamification going on, and it's really important to understand where they add value and where they are just games. So we'll get to that again in a minute. And of course, there's our favorite, the competency-based interview. So long as we're asking questions in an interview that are really organized, thoughtful, targeted, comprehensive, and we're willing to really probe people to understand where they're coming from, then a potential employee or someone who's ready for a promotion will talk very clearly about the experiences they've already had, the motivations and drivers that they have, and it gives us a much clearer idea where past performance will predict future behaviour. I put a little asterisk next to that one because it's not a golden ticket that what happened in the past will happen in the future. I always say that if we had a crystal ball, we'd probably all be millionaires, because if we could predict the future, we absolutely would. But what we're always looking for is reminding ourselves that that past behaviour occurs in an environment. And we all know that the way we behave one day in one environment could be entirely different to a different business environment. So say, for example, the difference between being happy in one cultural setting and being absolutely miserable in a different one, we generally get different behaviour. So we're always putting a little bit of a comment around that one, saying behaviour is predictable when we can understand the dynamic between the person and the environment that they're working in. What we don't want to see is a process where everyone gets on Google and says, I've done a bit of research, I found a tool, and I'm done. This is awesome. It's really important with the absolute flourishing of all sorts of tools available through the internet and the research that we can do. It's still absolutely critical that whatever you select is absolutely reliable, will measure what you say it's going to measure, and will give you the results that you're after. I'm not saying that Google can't give you information. It absolutely can, but it's really important to question and validate that what you're using is 100% reliable and can be backed up. Because if we use a cheapened approach to this, or something where we just grab something because it looks good, we will often find that it actually doesn't give us the results that we're after. We've just done some research with a very well-known organisation, and they said the tools that we've used, we've tested them and tested them and tested them, and they aren't giving the results that they promised. So we actually have to remove it, because we're not going to get candidates and we're not going to be performing better. So it's really important that we don't just take a cheapened approach to this, do a bit of Googling and think that we're safe. In terms of how we run assessment and development centres going forward, or assessment and development processes as well, some of it's the same, some of it's a little bit different. So what we want to say is that same foundation, but being flexible with what we do. We talk about a centre now in brackets, because originally a centre was a physical place that we would all go to. It was a centre of activity. We finished the activities and we moved away. And we all did the assessment process together. So what hasn't changed about the process or the centre is that we might have, for example, someone who coordinates all the participants, all the processes, making sure everyone has the information. They coordinate everything in the middle of the situation. If we have, say, classically, the magic number of 6 participants, and we use that for a group activity, and 6 is a magic number, it's something we want to work with, it's a good dynamic where there's enough interest and diversity occurring that 6 people creates a great crowd. When there's 4, there's not enough diversity in the group, and when there's 8, there's too much. Feel free to test drive that magic number, but it's absolutely guaranteed. Every time we have 6 people being assessed or being promoted, then we want at least 3 assessors or coaches to be watching them. So I can watch 2 people quite successfully. It gives a bit of diversity. But then when we look at the 6 people together, we want 3 different opinions coming through. So again, like Paul Mell at the beginning, if I assess him and it's just my opinion, he might be in or out incorrectly. Once I've got to argue with 2 other people, then there's more chance that whatever Melvin has shown us is going to be well validated across the 3 of us. So we want that diversity and the numbers to be showing that there's enough investment of different opinions occurring. What's different is that once upon a time, we used to look at things like, let's go work in an office where there are 2 large rooms, 3 small rooms. When we have people sitting in a group activity, there's a certain way we want to organise it, and all that's gone out the window. So while the numbers remain the same of who we want to invite, the processes are different. So can we do this entire process online in a virtual format? The answer is absolutely yes. The pros of this is we have a huge amount of flexibility in the way we go about things. And the con about this, the downside of it, is we are seeing people in headshots, just like we are today, and we're not getting that full experience of understanding what it's like to engage with them. But the reality is we have to work with the available resources and move forward with that. So we can run anything in an online manner, even the most complex activities, so long as we're flexible. The things we need to look at is that we've got online Zoom rooms. We can use breakout rooms with whiteboards when we used to stand in a room and do that together. We keep that ratio of people the same. So if there's 6 people in a room, 3 of them are going to be observers. And then what we say in a situation like this, if this virtual laptop that you can see here are 6 participants going through the assessment, when it comes to assessing, we just get rid of the observers and the group behaves as if it was just them holding a meeting like usual. So we've got all sorts of ways to work around the fact that we've gone electronic and we no longer are face-to-face. When it comes to results as well, once upon a time in the good old days, we used to write these huge long reports that were individualized to people. And now we've got such great AI, some artificial intelligence, and some super fast processes. So now we've got great short reports. We don't have to wait for days to get them. The costs are substantially reduced because everything's very efficient, very functional. We're looking for live, immediate, concise, and targeted feedback. So you might have a meeting and someone can sit with you straight away and say, here's how it went. This is what you did well. This is what you could improve. We'll send you a summary within the next 24 hours. And that's it. It's very much focused on being practical and very objectively driven to performance guidelines. We want people to get it while it's fresh in their mind and then they can move forward. But this used to be a space of where people would wait for days at a time to get these long-winded reports that they never read and probably threw them in a drawer somewhere. Now it's all converted into highly effective results. When it comes to development or leadership development particularly, we now have a whole range of diverse ways of making sure that whatever they learnt through the assessment or development centre process, here's a whole diverse range and flexible ways of applying the learning opportunities that they need. So whether they've got collaborative learning groups together or going out on an excursion, using business projects to get that learning embedded, again, the old school training has gone out the door. People are very much focused on saying, what can I do super practically, really fast, really effective, and embed those new skills as fast as possible. Okay. The last little section before we move into some use cases is just what is the difference between assessing performance and potential? When it comes to performance, clearly we are evaluating performance against the standards required in the current role. So that's one of the most important points. When we do that, we're looking to understand that the experience of the person matches the role that we're looking to, because that way we know they've got the right background, they're most likely to have the right skills. And so we're just testing that background history to say, what can I expect from them on the job? When we're looking at potential, however, it's an entirely different ballgame. So this is where we're evaluating someone's capability to a much higher standard or a more complex standard than what they currently have or even what they've experienced. So it's an entirely different way of looking at who is the person that we have in front of us and what is the full capability of what they're able to do right now. The experience issue can be a lot more flexible because we don't know how far they can stretch themselves. So it might be the case that if someone has been doing maybe some marketing one day, and we want to move them into sales, historically we would say there's some match, but it's not great. When we're looking for potential, we go, look, it doesn't really matter what their background is. If this is where they're driving to and what they're highly motivated to do, great, let's give them a chance and have a look at what's going on. So in a similar way, we're saying diversity of skills is much more powerful than just a straight line career path. The challenge with this is, I put a little bomb in there, is when we look at potential, when we're looking at assessment, it then becomes far more competitive and potentially what people perceive as unfair. I've been here for 10 years. I have been getting the right experience. How is it that someone over there who's only been here for 6 years in a different role is being assessed for this? And the answer is, there is no guarantee what the future career path of someone is. It really needs to be a lot more fluid and flexible, particularly in the environment that we're looking at, because people are coming from a whole range of different exposures, experience, and skill set. And again, we're looking to transition people from whatever skills and capability they have to maximize their potential. So we no longer want to look at careers in a straight line. We really want to broaden our view into that potential and give more people the opportunity to show what they're purely capable of. One of the ways that we've known or learnt for years, and this is, I'll talk this through, if you look at the big four consulting firms, whether it's KPMG or Accenture or PwC or whoever it is that's operating in this field, what they have as a career path is people who start off as accountants in a very junior sense and have to work their way up to partners. If you're in auditing and accounting, you're a very detailed person, or your tasks are very detailed. They're super focused and they're very fixed solutions. What is the accounting standard that we need to follow? What is the law saying on this? So it's like having tunnel vision over a spreadsheet constantly. When you're progressing into being a partner and you're earning over $250,000, you're doing that because you are highly engaged with the clients that you meet. You magnetize them to the attraction of your organization. You've got very diversified ways of doing things because no two clients are the same. And you've got to be super creative in the way you hear what they need and how you offer a solution. So the start of your career has a whole set of skills that the expected future of your career has almost no connection to. So you can start as an auditor and maybe you'll just become great at the technical skills, which isn't partner material. Or you might develop yourself and move across to that partner stage. And if you're great in that space, there's some chance you weren't great at auditing. So we've got to look at these things and say where we start and where we finish aren't always directly connected. And so there's been a lot of change in the way we've been working with the big four consulting firms and the way they hire people to give that diversity. The other way we look at this is, in terms of the future of work, is the digital transformation space is getting a huge amount of attention. So digital transformation in organizations has two sources. You have resources to create a digital space, or you have leaders who drive the use of digital solutions. Sometimes the two don't meet. So many organizations have the resources and tools in place, but they don't have the leaders who are capable of making the transformation. And it's the most common scenario that we see. When it comes to assessing for this, one of the situations we've looked at is a very large organization. They were super smart and said, to get us through the future of work, we need to purchase an IT company. And they did so 3 years ago. Less than 5% of their leaders were using the tools from the company that they purchased to make their future successful. So the leaders said originally, we're waiting to be told what to do. We're waiting for products to come out. We're waiting. And it was a very old school way of thinking that came at huge expense, and they were losing their edge to be the first mover in this space. So when it came to assessing, what we did was very simple. We just simply interviewed the leaders on standard questions to explore where they were thinking. Digital future was one of the topics, so we didn't make it the focus. It was just a part of a conversation, and how everyone responded was very natural, as though it was just, one of many topics. So everyone spoke about the excitement of having this IT company, and yes, our future in the future is going to be great. But close to 10% expressed an interest and a plan for actually utilising it. So as a result, we took those 10% of people and said, you are going to be the leaders, the sponsors, the drivers of this, because you're the only ones with the right mindset. And 6 months down the track, those people have converted the organisation so that they're now looking about 65% of the leaders and the organisation utilising the digital things that they needed. So it takes a bit of smarts to just say, when I figure out what the business needs, can I draw out the skills within this team to figure out what it is we need to be successful? So why do we go through the whole use of assessment and development processes or development centres? Is once we do, we can be a lot more objective about making performance be successful in the organisation, like identifying those leaders that were going to make the organisation do the digital transformation that they needed to. Had we been more obvious, people would have sucked up to the process and said, I'll tell you what you need, which is not the right thing. It gets a more thorough and realistic assessment of applicants and what we understand of them, just like we did with those leaders. It creates a far fairer and equitable process and takes out the bias or the favoritism that exists. When it's managed well, it is efficient. It seems cumbersome at times, but it is very efficient. And the return on investment that you get is measurable. To move now to an organisation that has 65% of its leaders and teams being far more efficient and effective is a great result for an organisation that wants to move forward. And no matter what we do, you get a much better employer brand or an enhanced employer brand if people coming through the organisation see you as being fair, being professional, being super organised, and saying when they hire someone or when they develop someone, they do it incredibly fairly, and I see it. It all makes sense to me. So that pretty much summarises where we are in this blended world. We've got a set of key points that we want you to go away with. And the fact is that assessment and development fundamentals, how we go through this process, hasn't changed because we as humans haven't changed. So it's really important to say that the way we understand what skills people have is no different to what it was 20 years ago. Aligning your processes to your business strategy is absolutely critical, and designing solutions that are valid and reliable is an absolute must. There are definitely organisations who have Googled things and found themselves in legal problems because they've been too quick to try and get something on the table rather than something useful. Candidate experience is central. I didn't highlight this particularly earlier on, but the way we organise these things is to make it as easy and as comfortable for our candidates, whether they're internal or external. So we've got a lot more flexibility about the way we organise their time rather than doing an intense experience, which is exhausting. So we're able to manage that a lot more effectively. And what we are looking at for has transformed in terms of the competencies that we're seeking now to make our future organisations successful. As we mentioned before, our focus is very much on problem solving, great digital savvy, and engagement. And when we've got those three things being mastered somewhere, then we're going to see a lot more better outcomes and returns on investment. So that pretty much summarises in the short space of time, perhaps the most critical parts. And if there's any questions, great, love to hear them. And if not, it's going to be a great Friday afternoon. So thanks for listening, and let me know if there's anything we can do to further assist. Mel, back to you.
Thank you so much for the great presentation, Amanda. We have heard from Amanda about the reality of assessments and development, where we learned a little about the assessment and development funnel, future of work's best competencies and literacies, different types of exercises and tool choices, useful case studies, and why we should use assessment and development centers. We're now entering the Q&A part of the session. We really have a few questions in the chat. We have our first question from Leah. Is it still as valid and accurate? What are the comparison numbers or percentages in difference? I think she asked this during your format of assessments and development centers slide.
Okay, so is it still valid? It's absolutely valid to utilise an assessment process. From our perspective, we wouldn't take anyone without some form of assessment. The easiest assessment might be you run an interview, but you do it in a way that's very clear and targeted so that you know the way someone responds to you and provides you with information is relevant to what you're looking for. In terms of the numbers that we showed, I'm not sure if I'm answering this question properly. You can play with the numbers, but there's a whole understanding of humans operating as tribes. So 2 pieces of information I'll throw out is that small groups work in spaces of 6 because that's, again, as much as the brain can handle when we're having a conversation together. The other number that's really interesting is tribes operate in numbers of 150 as a maximum. So they make a lot of jokes about social media, and when you've got 30,000 followers or even 2,000 followers, you can't possibly know who they are. So when we structure our organizations in groups of 150 and small groups of 6 or small teams, they are the things that work for our brains. Our brains aren't becoming more digital over time. They are what they are, and they are the numbers that magically work. So there you go.
That's nice. Our next question is, what is the difference between assessing for performance and potential, and how can I do this well?
Okay, so when it comes to assessing for performance and potential, the actual assessment process doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the benchmark. So when you assess for performance, as we said, we're looking for similarly experienced people to come in and deliver something very specific. You might assess them using an interview as a simple example. When we're assessing for potential, we're saying we want this person to perform, or we're questioning how far above their current status or different to their current status can they perform. So we may not be looking at an interview to talk about experience per se. We'll be looking a little bit more broadly to say, what is their mindset? What is their motivation? What is their interest in these other areas? And then saying, what relevant experience can we draw on to help substantiate it? It's a tough question. It's a really tricky one, but the assessment process remains the same. It's the way you deliver it that makes it a bit different.
I see. Our last question from Rui Chen: how to explain to people when they do not have potential?
Ouch is the first one. Apology is the second one. But quite seriously, when it comes to human behavior, I always say to people, if we treat it like a lawyer collecting evidence. So when I speak to people about their performance, it's never good and it's never bad. It just is what we observe. So we might be saying to someone, when you did that presentation in front of us, it was very hard to understand the flow of your communication. The comments you made were fairly disjointed, and we couldn't observe you segueing from one topic to the next. So when it comes to potential, we're unclear at this point in time. If you've got the ability to learn, you're more than welcome to go and look at that piece of evidence and see what you can do to improve it. But at this, and we always use this phrase, at this point in time, we can't see a direct connection between where you are today and what this role requires of you, or what the skills are that are required of you going forward. So we try and avoid as much as possible emotive language or judgment, because the person is not bad. It's just that they're not appropriate for what we're looking for at this point in time. When you deliver it like that, it makes it a lot easier, because every person is great in whatever format they are. The skill in life is finding the role where I am going to utilize my skills to the best of my ability, and the organization that's got the best environment for me. Other than that, it's just a case of it's not good or bad. It's just not a great fit at this point in time.
Great. I have a question for you.
Sure.
How can I quickly and accurately surface the high potentials within my organization?
How can you, I guess, identify them?
Yeah.
Okay. When we're looking at high potentials, you're always looking at what someone is showing you in terms of competence. So you'll have a certain expectation of competence and whether they meet that. Your high potentials are people who surprise you. So they've achieved what's needed to be achieved, and then they show you a whole lot more that you thought, wow, that's gone above and beyond what I was expecting. The other way you look for high potentials is when you're having a conversation with them and you're looking at the way they think about things. And when they think beyond the scope of their role and freely engage in a conversation about things well beyond what they're required to do, you're then beginning to see someone who sees the world as a bigger place. I use this very carefully because it's not always true, but if we talked about stereotypes, the classic might be people in Australia, where I am, if you talk about government workers, they're often very narrow thinkers. They're in an environment where they're told what to do. They're not allowed to break the rules. And so they develop a mindset that follows that. That your high potentials do what's required of them and think and act well beyond that as well. So they just offer you a whole lot more. And you're often like, wow. And if your constant response to someone is, wow, wasn't expecting that, you're finding your high potentials.
Nice, great, awesome. If anyone has any more questions, you can put it in the chat box. If not, Amanda, are you ready to wrap up?
I am very ready to wrap up. I just want to say it's a great Friday afternoon. It's been a great experience having a lot of you here over the course of the month, and we'd love to see you again. It's just been awesome to have you here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for bringing up your questions. We're respectful of everyone's time, and we have come to the end of the session. We would love to receive feedback from you. So flash right in front of the screen is a feedback form you can scan. There's a QR code. The link will also be sent in the chat box. So hit right on and tell us how you feel about today's session and how we can improve on future sessions as well. And again, two options for you. You can either scan the QR code on the screen right now, or you can click on the link in the chat box. While you're doing that, let me take this moment to thank, firstly, our expert for today, Amanda, for the wonderful session. It's really useful and timely. Next, the people team for bringing this event into reality. And of course, the warmest thank you to all of the audience we have today to make this discussion engaging. This has been Melvin, and thank you. And do follow us on our socials because there will be more events to come.
Thank you.